Okay, so I've got my model that you're probably sick of looking at, but the hub there, and I'll take it back into Lumion shortly. So I've already shown you how to link it into Lumion, but I'll go through that again. But before I do that, I want to go over materials a little bit more and just point out some of the common issues most people have with materials in Revit, which, now that you're all experienced Revit users, should make a lot more sense than maybe when we did it earlier. So I'll start with the column here, which is, if you know about the different types of columns in Revit, it's a structural column. So that's one of the things you need to know about columns in Revit. There are structural columns and architectural columns. And you'll all have columns, pretty much. I don't think any of your spaces... Oh, the silos don't. That's a good point out here. So the silos probably don't. Oh, then, okay, so maybe some of you don't have too many columns. Oh, really? I thought the warehouse... Ah, okay, so it just spans all the way across. Right. Oh, okay, well, trusses are the same. So, yeah. Okay, so trusses are structural elements. So really, I'm just trying to point out a couple of things about the structural elements as opposed to the others. So notice you've got structural columns and then columns architectural. So you'll see if you go to the structure tab, there are a lot of other structural elements. And they all work in a similar way because engineers who, the structural tools are set up for, they work a bit differently to architects and designers. Then when you go to edit type with a lot of these elements, you won't see material property. Doesn't mean it's not there. So with structural elements, just assume that it's going to be instance-based, which means it's in properties, not in the type properties. And you know what the difference is? If it's in here, when I go to edit type, that means all of the columns of this type, 450mm, if I change that, any of these properties, like the size, all of those columns of that type are going to change. That's right, that's right. You could duplicate it, and then you could have one 450mm and another 500mm. But if it's instance-based, if it's in properties here, that means it's the properties just for that one that's selected. So that way each column can have a different material without me having to duplicate the type. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So if we were to look at that column, well, I'll just select it and then go to edit the family. I won't go into making parameters, but if you look at the parameters, then you'll see when it says default in here, it means it's instance-based. And you'll see when you go and look at the settings, here you've got instance and type. So instance is by element and type is by type. You usually don't need to set that up, and if you're new to making parameters, when you're doing your own, start off with type. Don't worry about using instance at first, unless you get it and you know what it does. But it's really important that you understand when you're working with families that you've loaded, guys, then you'll have those two options. So it can either be here when you go to edit type, or it can be in properties, which means it's instance-based, which means, again, I've got several columns that are the same type, so that's one. This is another one that's also 450mm. But if I change the material of the one that's selected, the other one won't change. That's good, yeah. Pretty much, yeah, so it's a good habit. If you're going, yes, start off. Pretty much, yeah, so if it's in type, that's right, it does change them all. Of that type. So I've got several different sizes for some of these columns, and you need to do it for each one.
What if you wanted to change all of them, but they're in properties like parameters?
If you want to change them all, yeah, good point. So there's a trick there. So let's say I want to change all of those columns that are 450mm without having to go and find them all. Yep. So you right-click. Exactly.
Oh, just that.
Yeah. That's it. You just select them all. Yeah. And remember, it selects all of that type. I know it says select all instances, but really it's all instances of that type is what it means. So all the 450mm columns will get selected, and now I can just change the material and it will change all.
And is it also for elevation as well?
Yes, for everything. It changes everything. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes life easier because otherwise it's really difficult. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And so for those structural elements, it makes all the difference because otherwise they'd be almost unusable if you had to go and select each one just to change the material of all of them. So, okay, so hopefully that'll make it a bit clearer when you're working with different types of objects. Now, I'll come back to those columns in a second because I want to show you material there, but I just want to show you as well when you have families that don't have a material. This one does. What about this one? So I've added parameters to most of these. Yep, done that one too. What about this one? No, done that one too. Okay, I'm just going to get one from the library. So, do you all know on the P drive, you've got the Revit library folder, of course, and then in that folder there's this Chew Revit library. Have you seen that resource? So make sure you know about that. It's a great library. Everyone always asks, where does the Chew come from? It's not. It was him and his wife. So his surname was H-O. It was the first two letters of his surname, and then his wife's surname was CH. The first two letters. So that's all it is. So he was a great Revit user, and he's retired now, but he made most of these families. So you're welcome to use those. He said it's okay, and so as well as the 2016 library, there are older versions of the library there. Oh no, sorry, I put them all together. So yeah, great resource, make sure you know about it, but be aware he didn't do a lot of rendering, he did most of this for construction. So you might see that some of the families, especially if it says CE, they're the ones he made, they may not have the parameters you want. So I'm going to put this onto my level there. Yep. And, okay, so if we select that, go to edit type, and no parameter. Yeah, now when you see that one, that's one that relies on global parameters, and you won't have the global parameters file to use it. So, yeah, I know it's annoying because it's there always, but you can't do anything with it. Yeah. Sure.
What width can a bathroom door be? Because it's really hard to edit the one that comes with it.
What width can a bathroom door be?
Yeah, like in a cubicle.
In a cubicle, okay. Well, look, you can easily go down to 720. Yeah, 720 is fine. I've even done them at 620.
Okay, because it's really hard to edit the Revit doors that come with it.
Oh yeah, the cubicle one.
No, just the normal.
Oh, have you seen there's a cubicle family? Yeah. Use the cubicle one. It's great. I use it all the time. Yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah. So, I'll show you that in a minute, maybe, if I got rid of it. It's a compressed file, just like a zip file. So, yeah, it's by a company called WinRAR. So you can download their version. It's like WinZip. Yeah. Otherwise, zip files can be opened in Windows natively now, but I don't think RARs can. Okay, now unfortunately, having told you that Max, who was the guy who did all of this, didn't set up materials for everything. Everything that I find here has got them. But you know what I mean when it comes up without a material? Hopefully? Yeah, really frustrating. So this one maybe, I know. You know, these are just different things in the library. I'm just choosing them at random. No, that's a pretty standard commercial one. Yeah. They are huge. I mean, they're huge things. In a cafe or whatever, you've got to allow a lot of room. Oh, yeah. No. I mean, look, you can give it nicer colours, but otherwise, coffee machines, haven't changed that much. Yeah. Okay, so this is the last one I'll try, and hopefully, so that's a pizza oven, and yeah. And it's got parameters too. But you do know what I mean when it comes up without the parameters. And I was going to show you how you can make them. But that might be... Yeah, well, you can make your own families, definitely. But when you get things from BIM Object, that's when you have to go and add them usually. Okay, so maybe this might have the setup I want. Well, let's go and take it off and then... Okay, so there we are. So now I've got a family. When I go to edit type, there's no parameter. When I look in properties, there's no parameter. In other words, I can't change the material in the project. So, what do? Exactly. Go to edit the family. Select all the bits you want to give your material to. But then you'll often see that it won't let you change the material anymore. And do you know why that happens when you get it? Exactly, I've got different things selected, so you can go to filter and then deselect any voids. So that's the first thing that might help you. And this is essential. When you get things from Revit City, you'll find this all the time. So now I can assign a material. Now, a lot of people get to this point and think, great, I can do my material here. I can click this button and I can make a material in the family. Exactly, it doesn't work. It'll work the first go and you think, great, I know how to do it. And then the second go, it won't work. So I'll show you why. Okay, so let's say, what do we want this bike rack to be?
Pink velvet.
Okay. Well, I'll make it pink metal, but yeah. Okay, so I don't need to go over making materials. Hopefully you're all pretty comfortable with that. So I'll just do this without telling you how. And so we'll call it, yeah, pink. I'm happy with pink. Metal. I'll show you fabric later. Well, don't want metal. I want a fabric bike rack. Okay, so I'm going to go and okay, so I'll get a metal, and actually, if it's pink, will we use a metal render material? No. Even anodized metal is very different to what you'd look at here, which is powder coated. So if it's powder coated, use plastic. Oh, what, after 50 years? No, powder coating protects it at the beach. No, but powder coating is a good protection. I've got powder coating on some things I've done that's lasted 20 years. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, so the only problem with powder coating is it's a bit daggy because it's so glossy. That's the only reason I don't like it. But otherwise, powder coating's great finish. Yeah, I've right-clicked on appearance and then replace, that's right, and that brings up this. No, I think you probably can get matte powder coating. Yeah. It's just a lot of it is, too shiny. Yep. So there we are. Okay, so I've done my material.
And you use the plastic.
Yeah. Okay, so plastic, to say it's powder coated. And, there. Now this is a thing to see. It didn't change. It's not because I did anything wrong. It's because of this bug. Since Revit 2019, there's been a little bug. If I click on these things now, you'll see that the material didn't get assigned.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I did anything wrong. Yep.
And does it go to some random number?
Yeah, it just doesn't change the first go. But do it again and it will change. No, it's supposed to work, but it doesn't. So, yeah. So, but it doesn't mean you need to make the material again, you just need to assign it again. So you'll see now, if I go back, I know I did it because when I go here, there's my pink metal. So it's there, and you just need to assign it a second time to make it go on. Yeah, if you want to get the colour from the appearance, yeah. Yeah, it means that when you're in a shaded view, you get a similar colour to what you get in realistic, that's all. Yeah. Okay, so I've got my material assigned, and now I'll, just so that it's clear what I'm doing, I'm going to save this into a different folder so that I don't change the original, because someone else might want to use it. Yeah, well, that's it. I don't want them to get pink. And it did have a parameter before. I've taken it off. So now I'll load it back into the project, overwrite the existing... I cleared it, and I'm going to put it back on. I haven't put it back yet, but I'm going to get to that. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, until you're using parameters, they don't make a difference. So it's changed, and you think, great, I know how to do it. But it means if you think that's all there is, then you don't actually know how to do it. So I'll go back to Edit Family, and I think, great, I can change the material. Right, because I can't do it here. Why can't I do it here? If I go to Edit Type, there's no parameter, and that's fine, I took it away, so there's no parameter in Properties either, so I can't change the material in the project. If I go Edit Family, and then change the material in the family, so let's say, I'm a bit sick of the pink, I want that to be a different colour, or even just a different shade of pink, maybe we want a darker pink. Yeah, let's go lighter. Lighter's probably nicer. Okay, so I've got my nice light pink, okay, and it's there. In the family, it's the light pink. So, I'll load it back into the project. Doesn't matter which option you choose here, it will not change. That's what I'm really trying to show you. Right, because I changed it in the family. So once you realise that the material is stored in both places, there's a version of that pink material in the family, and there's a version of the pink material in the project. No, that won't work either. No. So the material, it's in the project. If I go to Manage, and then look at my list of materials, there's a material called pink metal in this project.
But it's not the same one?
No. And it's deliberately set up like that because you wouldn't want it to update. Because in a firm where you've got several people working, or even just one, you'll have the things in your library. And so you might have bike racks in your library that you're using for subsequent projects, but when you change the material there, you don't want it to update previous projects that are finished. They're using the same family. So instead of changing it in the family, you use a parameter and change it in the project. That's the better way. So, okay, so if we go Edit Family, so I wouldn't even worry about assigning materials in the family file at first until you get used to it. So here, I would just select all of these things that I want, the material. Yep, I'm not even going to worry about the material. It's got pink metal, but that doesn't matter. The key to make it work is knowing how to add a parameter, and that's the button next to this material option, that grey button. And then we click New, and we call it Bike Rack Material. So I'm not assigning the material here. I'm giving it the capability of having a material assigned in the project.
And you do type, not instance, because they're all going to be
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. That's right, exactly.
You choose the
So,
square,
yep,
choose the fabric,
yep.
the photograph,
Yep.
So you don't have to make the light pink material there now in the project as well.
Yes, yep, yep. So that's why it's sometimes not worth doing it in the family, because normally in a project you're going to have a selection of maybe, what at most, 5 or 6, maybe 10 materials in a particular project. And then you're going to assign those to lots of different families.
Yeah.
So it's better to do the materials in the project.
Yeah, so set the parameters in the family and leave it blank.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Exactly, that's it, yep. So now, if I go back and load it and get into the project, doesn't matter again which option I choose here. I'll choose the bottom one just so you can see it makes no difference. It's still got the old material, but then if I go to Edit Type, there's my bike rack material, and I can easily change it in the project. So that's all I want to show you, just to make it a bit clearer why parameters are so useful and essential when you get families made by other people that you've downloaded maybe from Revit City, and you need to set them up so that you can then work with the materials. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So what is it sort of essential for women?
It's mostly for downloaded families.
Downloaded. So
That-
if we make them
yeah.
ourselves, we should come across that.
No, so if you make them yourselves, then you should set up your own parameters for everything you make so you can change the materials. Otherwise, you'll have to go back to the family each time to work out what material they're using. So until you can set parameters for materials, you won't be able to effectively change the materials when you're in a project file. Yeah. And I know it seems like extra work, but this is like the main difference between programs like SketchUp and programs like Revit. It's set up to manage large groups of objects. Yes, I'm recording all of this. Yeah. Okay, so that's just the first thing. There's a little bit more materials. So I've got the column. And now it should be a bit clearer because we know it's instance-based. The material parameter is in properties, not in type properties. So I don't go edit type. I just scroll down in properties to find the structural material. Columns all tend to use that structural material parameter. So we're going to click Browse and just show you how to make a quick concrete texture and then show you the issue that people often have with the path for that texture. The path. Yeah, the path, yeah. So this, this concrete image is actually pretty good. And this is just from the default Revit library. So, yeah, it's a bit grainy, but yeah, I'm going to probably get a high-res one later. But I don't mind this one. It looks all right. Oh, a bit green here. That's the main problem. That's what I want to show you, how to change the colour. So, that's good. Yeah, it is green, definitely. Okay, so I've got the image there. And because I'm going to work on my own, I'm not going to store it here. Do you all know about this folder? Okay, so when you go to work on the materials out of the Revit library, they all use these textures that come with Revit. When you install Revit, you all would have this folder on your own computer, which is chock full of pretty good textures, yeah. In the Revit metric library, they'll be there. I'll just copy it from here. We've got a copy on these computers. Yeah. Yes, yes, it is. That's right, exactly. In the program files folder, that's right. Now, I've been using this for decades, and I still would not remember that path. Right? Who's going to remember program files, common files, Autodesk shared materials, textures, run mats? And it changes. So don't try to remember it, but just know that it's there. And you can usually get to it by going to an old material if you need to get taken to it automatically. That's not really what I'm trying to show you. I just want to make sure you knew about that. But what I wanted to really show you is then if I want to use my own texture. So let's say I've got that one as a starting point. I'm going to put it into my own folder. And this is something you all need to think about when you're working with image files, textures in other words, that are part of materials. Okay, so I've copied it into my textures folder that you can't get to, or that no one can get to except me. And so let's just get this sort by, what are we going to do? There we go, name. Okay, so there's my image, and I'm going to go and edit that with, what do you think? Photoshop, of course. Yeah. So what are the keys to working with materials that use textures? In other words, probably most of the materials you're going to work with in Revit, a lot of them are going to use texture files. The key is not trying to do everything with the settings in here. So there are lots of settings you can use to change the way that texture comes up in the material. But don't try to take it too far, especially things like brightness, where people are adjusting this to try and change the way their image looks. It's really touchy and it's still not going to do everything you want. So the better option usually is to do what you want in Photoshop. And of course, when you change this image and then use it for your material, of course, that's going to come through. So, like I said, 2 green probably, so something we can do there. Well, I can show you a bit of Photoshop as well while we're at it. And, you know, we do try to teach Photoshop, but it's one of those programs you really just got to use a lot to get the most out of it. So I'm sure you all know about using adjustments under the image menu. Levels, hopefully you're all using levels, but all those other good ones are really useful. But I don't use that option very often at all because normally I want to be able to go back to the original, so using adjustment layers is a really important thing. You haven't used adjustment layers? Oh, great. Well, if you've used adjustments, you can definitely use adjustment layers. So I'll make an adjustment layer. I want to change the levels, but first I want to try, black and white actually. Let's see. Exactly. Yeah. And so see how now layer 0 is underneath. So if I want to see it without my adjustment, I can just turn that adjustment layer off and the original is still there, unaffected. And you can stack up adjustment layers. So if I go back again, add another adjustment layer. So I'll do levels. And that simply goes on top. And then I can change the levels there. So maybe just tighten that up a bit. There we go. That's going to make it a bit stronger. Okay, so again, if you decide that you want to go back to the original or just turn one of them off, you can easily disable individual adjustment layers. And then also, even better, if you need to go back and change them later, you can. So it's not just a one-off adjustment like the things, all those options under adjustments on the image menu. So adjustment layers are brilliant. If you're not using those, that's a great thing to try. And while I'm at it on that menu, don't forget about layer masks. If you're not using layer masks, just go and learn them. Oh, okay, I'll show you. Okay, this is the last thing in Photoshop because we've got to go back to Revit, but I'll show you. For this, it doesn't really make sense to show you, so I'll have to just open up another file. Yeah, this one will do. So the one I showed you last week with the different layers. Oh, it's got a sequence. Okay, so I'll have to go to see all the things. Okay, so let's say we want, which layer is that? So we want the other layer here. That's a smart object layer, so I'm going to have to right-click and then rasterize it. I don't like working with smart objects with layer masks. So, yep, rasterize layer. And then, so let's decide what do we want him to be. Maybe lose a bit of weight. He's already pretty skinny though. But I'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to go and add a layer mask to this layer. So I've got the layer selected, Asian man walking away, and then under layer I'll go to layer mask, reveal all, and it's got a white mask put over that layer.
What does that mean though, reveal all?
So it means that everything's exposed. I'll just go back and show you the difference. So if I go back and use hide all, then it'll be black. And then everything's hidden. The masks over here in the layers. See how that... Yeah. So black takes away. So this is the mask down here.
But what's the masking?
The layer. The layer, the man is on that layer, so he's completely hidden.
Turn the layer off. This is what I get confused.
Yeah, so masking is to hide part of a layer. So it's like when you're screen printing and you can just cover certain parts rather than deleting them. Okay, so it's to mask things. Okay, so well, I'll show you the other one. So the other one is, because this layer's got a transparency, you can see most of it's a checkerboard. So if I choose from transparency, we're going to get a mask which is already cutting him out. So that can make it a bit clearer, if you haven't used masks before, what they can look like. So where it's black, it's hidden, and where it's white, it's revealed. Yep. So at the moment, wherever he is, he's been cut out, and the white part there is what we can see. If I then go and use the brush tool, and then I'll go and make sure I'm painting in black. So when you go to a layer mask, it automatically changes your foreground and background colours to black and white, because that's what you use usually with a layer mask. You can use any colour, but normally you use black and white. Worry about what other colours do later. So let's say we want to take his arm away for some reason. That could work. Or make him, just not stick out so much for some reason. It might just be interfering with our image. So you paint, just with the brush tool. It's black. So if I paint, it takes him away. Alright, so he's... Yeah, it can be really super useful. For doing montage, it's super, super useful. So he still looks believable, and it might just work better with the things we want to show. But then I've decided, okay, actually, I want his elbow to come back. Then I can switch to paint with white. Because I've used a mask instead of deleting his shoulder, I can just paint it back. Yeah, that's right. You can use it for shadows. Yeah, yeah. So it's super useful because if you delete things, of course, It's non-destructive. That's it. Yeah, that's the point. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you don't lose it. It is super useful. Okay, so that's all a layer mask is. And once you understand that, I'm sure you'll be using them instead of deleting things all the time. And so then going back to our concrete, so what I really wanted to do there was show you about the paths. Sorry, it hasn't crashed, don't worry. It's just... okay, so there's my concrete, my new concrete. So I'm going to go Save As. And I'll save it as a JPEG, as a PSD. It's always good to have the original Photoshop file saved. Then I'm going to save a copy as either a JPEG or PNG. It's up to you, but PNGs are probably preferred. And I'll call it grey. Well, it's already grey, so let's say grey without the one. So it's got a different name. No. So the technical difference between PNG and JPEG is that PNGs can handle more channels and have other options that JPEGs don't have. But otherwise, the image quality is very similar. They both use algorithms to compress the file. So, okay, so now back into Revit, I can of course go to my material and then change my image over to the new one that I've just saved. Exactly, yep, that's right. So, textures, here it is, and that's right. So this is the one. So I've got my new texture, but then what happens if I go to another computer? So I'm going to close the file. So you can see, well, it's a bit hard to see there, but if I go to realistic, you'll see the texture is on the column. So it's there. And we'll make it look better later, but it's definitely there. So I'm going to save my file and then close Revit. So I won't even close Revit, I'll just close the file. And then I'm going to confuse it a bit and make it like it would be if I went to another computer. So if I go and find my textures folder, there it is, and I'm just going to move that to a different place, which is the same as if you're going to a different computer. Okay, I've just got it open in Photoshop. It's open. Yep. There we go. Okay, so now I'll go and open that file again. And we've lost the texture. So hopefully that's something you've all seen, where you go from one computer to another and you lose most of your texture files. Have you all had that problem? Oh, okay, right. Oh yes, if you're lucky enough to have a computer that you can just work on for everything, that's fine. But you will, as you do a lot more rendering, you definitely will need to change computers. You might have several computers all rendering at once, or you might just need to go and work somewhere else. So, all you need to do then is on the File menu, go to Options, or you might even have a file that you've done a little bit on in class, and then you want to take it onto your own computer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so on the File menu, you go to Options. So do you know about that? When you go to here, this Options option down the bottom is where you set a lot of the preferences in Revit. So a lot of the settings that, you know, determine how the program looks and runs. If you have graphics issues, that's where you go and change the settings, you know, for hardware, acceleration, to do with your graphics cards, things like that. And if you go to the Rendering tab, you'll see you can add your own paths for textures. And this is a common thing. All rendering programs, all 3D rendering programs will give you this option, because all 3D rendering programs can use textures. So I'm going to clear the one that I already had, and I'm going to go and add in a new one. So just go to Rendering, click the green plus, and oops, I've done that twice, so I better just get rid of one of those. So then it'll add a path, and then you can just browse and choose the folder that you've stored your textures in. So it's really important at this stage, when you start to use your own texture files, that you store them all in one folder as well, so that you can go to another computer and take them all with you, and then you can easily set the path if there's only one folder. Yes. Yeah, all the texture files. Oh no, not into the Revit one, no, I wouldn't, no. Well, you can, but it's a hard one to find, and there's already a lot of other stuff in it, so you're better off... Yeah, no, you're better off making your own, and then setting the path here. That's the best way.
You can set multiple paths.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can set multiple paths. Sorry? Yes. No, it will link them for you. So notice that you don't see the files, so it's choosing the folder, so it won't show you the texture files. But again, we're just choosing the folder, and if I click OK now, sometimes it just comes up straight away. Sometimes if you select it, it'll wake it up. But no, here, so what I'll do is I'll go and select the column and then go down. It's on realistic. So I'll go down and just browse to choose the material, and when I go to appearance, you'll see it's found it. Right, so you'll know if it hasn't because it'll give you the error, the red background with that big warning sign. So if you can see it there, it's found it, and if I click OK, you can see, there it is. No, not at all. If it's using a texture, it ignores that for rendering. Yeah. Okay, so that's something that will definitely help you, particularly as you go further and do more with your own textures. And then again, don't forget that you can do a lot of the work to change the way textures work and appear by working in Photoshop, rather than doing a lot of the work in the material settings in Revit. And maybe it's a good chance, just while we're finishing up there, to go over all those texture-related settings. There's too much to go through everything because you've got just so many options in Revit with the different material types. But if I click on the little down arrow there, you've got these other presets. They can be extremely useful, particularly tiles and gradient and so on. But otherwise, you probably use the image option mostly, and then when you click on the image swatch, make sure you realise that's where you can set the size and the rotation of your texture. So if you want that to be going the other way, I can make that 90 degrees, and then it'll be vertical, or going around the other way. That probably works better on an object like that. Now, I won't go through all those settings, but have a look at the options if you haven't done that already in the texture settings. And that's probably it for materials in Revit. We can definitely do more, but that'll definitely be a lot to go on with. And then maybe I'll very quickly just go through the linking back into Lumion. I won't go through the whole process again, but maybe after this I'll go through the setup in Lumion again if you want me to, but I won't need to record it. But just very quickly now, if I open up Lumion, and it can be a little bit slow starting up, but once it opens, it'll run pretty well. Yeah, but it won't be. I'll just quickly show the materials in Lumion. Won't do much on that. No, you've got to export it first. So maybe I'll just quickly show you that. So in Revit, you need the Lumion tab, and you go to export. And that's what you load in Lumion. So my Lumion's still just opening, but it shouldn't be. So? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So that's why you might need the textures from your computer copied across with your Revit file. Oh, well, if you just use the defaults, then you don't need to. Yeah, if they're just from the Revit library. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, it's good to think about that because No, you should export from a 3D view, and usually you want to make a view just for Lumion. So make a 3D view, call it Lumion, and then you can hide the things that you don't want to see in Lumion in that view. Yeah, well, yeah, usually, yeah, trees and plants don't work if they're from Revit. So, yeah, no, that can come through. Yeah, oh, yeah, keep all of that. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, they won't come up in a 3D view, so that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully Lumion's finally started. I think my computer's got a few things to do, and it's a bit slow today. I should have probably opened it before, but I thought it wasn't going to take that long. Tedious. Okay, so while that's happening, I might just export again, so I didn't show you that. And okay, so make sure you realise that when you're exporting for Lumion, it works best if you use the same file name every time. So when you export, just keep exporting over the same file. Yep. Oh, recovery, yeah. Save it with a new name and take the recovery out. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I've exported my Lumion file again, and hopefully by now Lumion's open. There we are, finally. Okay, now I've already done the link from Revit to Lumion previously, so I don't need to use a new scene. I'm going to go and open up a previous scene. Up here, you've got load scene. There's the hub that I set up earlier. Okay, and so now I want to bring the change across that I've just made, and it's mostly going to be those columns that have changed and the bike rack maybe. Okay, so what do? Make sure you're on imports. With the select option, you can find the import node. So that's this sphere that comes up when you hover over the thing that you've brought in from Revit. So there it is, there's my node. When you click, it'll go blue. When you click select it, and then you get this reload button to bring in the changes. Now I've clicked it, which means it's reloading. It might just take a minute. Sorry? I'll just leave it on whatever it is. Yep, yep. Okay, so there you can see it didn't bring the change across that I just showed you. Right, so there's no bike rack, which tells us it's probably not the right file. Or is there? No, sorry, the bike rack's gone. Where's my bike rack? Is it hidden? I must have deleted it. Okay, so I'll just do that again. So I'll put the bike rack in. Just so you can see if it's the right one. Okay, so Lumion, export. Okay, so now back into Lumion, and I'll just click the re-import button. I don't need to do anything else. And it should then bring in the change. There it is, there's my bike rack, so I know that's brought in the change. It's on the ground too. Yeah. Okay, so then it should have brought the changes to the material as well. Sometimes they're a bit hard to see though in Lumion. But I just wanted to show you as well, if I go and choose the material there, yeah, it's right. So that's the cast in place grey. It's not imported material, so that's fine. But just so that it's clear, I don't think everyone realises that the materials can be redone in Lumion. You don't have to, but they do look better in Lumion if you choose the Lumion materials. So it's sometimes 6 of one, half a dozen of the other though. If you've done a good material in Revit, or another program, and you bring that into Lumion, and it looks good enough, then it's good enough. Yeah, exactly. Especially things like glass. But yeah, a lot of it does. But for things like wood textures can actually work pretty well if they're from Revit, because they're fairly matte, and well, usually I do wood matte.
This is the question I have here.
Yep, yep.
So if you're, say, selecting the concrete columns,
Yeah.
you see how all the concrete columns are selected?
Yeah, that's right.
If,
Well, a better example is this floor. So see here, this floor is default material.
well, I was just going to say you accidentally made all the columns the one thing in Revit,
Yep.
and you now said, no, that column's obviously got to be a different thing.
Yeah.
You'll always have to go back into Revit and make it different so that you
Exactly,
can change it.
exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. So here, so this one's really good because that default material, it's the default material that comes up if you don't choose something. So
Which I do all the time.
yeah, everyone does.
Stuff that might-
Yeah, and so here you see all my parts of my balustrade, the handrail, and the ground material is all default, and the floor edge there, and I want to make them all different. So I'll go back to Revit, and then choose the, let's say we'll start with the floor. So that is a floor, and so I'll go Edit Type, and I'll duplicate it, and then give it a new name, and I'll call this Ground Level Floor. That's what it is. Oops.
Or you could name it after the project or whatever.
Yeah. As long as it's got a different name. Yeah. And then go to Edit the Structure, and then when it's by category, that's why it's got that default. So I'm going to hit Browse there, and then just give it a new material with a new name. So I'll say.
End up with thousands of materials if you wanted to keep things edit somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Everything can have a different material.
And that's what got confusing.
Yep. So I don't even need to make the material different.
Choose one of the materials in there and then give it a number.
You could, yeah.
The interval is different.
That's right. Yep, that's fine. Yep. Yeah, that's right. So here, I didn't change that material. It's still this concrete. Yep. So yeah, so this material hasn't changed. It's still that concrete that I made before, but I've given it a new name, and I've duplicated the appearance. So it's a completely unique name. So now I'll save it. Okay, so remember, always save your Revit file every time you do something that matters, because it crashes a lot, especially when you don't want it to. Then I can export again, and you'll get really fast at this. So that's why I was saying you don't need to have the design anywhere near being complete to set up the link into Lumion. And that's really what I'm trying to get you to. That's right, yeah, you do need to use the computers here. A little bit. The right mouse button, right drag. Yeah.
With the putting stuff on a USB,
Yep.
we have to do the materials, but we also need to do any families being created.
Yeah, any textures, only the textures.
Just textures.
Yeah, don't worry so much. No, if you don't need to, you can store families, but you don't really need to because all the families get saved in a project file, and they can be exported from there if you need to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's my new, there's my node, and I'll click Reload, and you'll see then that this material on the floor now won't be any different yet, but when I select it, you can see it says concrete paved. So it's got that new name, which means, as Kelly's discovered, I can now change it to something completely different. Yeah, so let's go for a brick paver for something completely different, which I would never do here, but I don't know what we're thinking to do there actually. Probably would have been some sort of pavers, but not one of these. Something better. They do have pavers somewhere. I thought it was in outdoors. Maybe in concrete, actually. So there.
How they categorise the indoor and outdoor.
Exactly, I know. It's a bit arbitrary, yeah. But it's really just, you can just search through and find, what you need. Yeah, I know. They're gaming people, they think about things differently. And yeah, so that's now done, and then the other things that were originally grouped with it, of course, haven't changed.
They got lots of good people.
Yeah, the people are so much better than they used to be. Yeah, yeah. Yep, that's it. But have a good look through the library. Make sure you go through all the tabs. Yeah, because the newer people are much better than the old people. But the old people are still the ones on the first tab, I think. So, yeah, this guy looks so much better than... And he's not even one of the brand new ones. He's, I think, from version 8. And he's a lot better than the, the old version 7. Yeah. Sorry? If it's a big file, yeah, it might take a little while. But if it takes too long, try saving it onto... Is it on a hard drive or on your USB? Yeah, so try saving your Revit file onto either a network drive or even just the documents folder on your computer. Try exporting from there. Yeah. You haven't been able to use the 3D views? Oh, okay, I'll have a look at that. I'll have a look at it. Yeah. Okay, so maybe just as a very, very final thing, we'll have to come back to the animation later. Yeah. But what I might just show you really quickly is how to get quick still renders, because it seems like you're at that stage where you just want to get preliminary perspectives. So I'll make a new one. So if you missed it, I just clicked on the photo button over here to go to my cameras, and I haven't changed anything. This is a brand new camera. All I did was click on the store camera button to save it. So this is my camera view. And then to render it, I'm going to go to custom style and then just use the interior preset. Oh, no, sorry, we're not interior here, so I'll click on that. We're outside. Yeah, I'm used to doing, see, interior design. Anyhow, so I'll go to realistic, and that's even better. So that's it. If I click on the render photos button now, and then I'll choose desktop, that'll do. And go to a different folder. And let it go. And you might get a better result than you would out of Revit. Oh yeah, that's right. There's great special effects like that. Yeah, what are they called? God rays, but there's another word for them. I know what you mean. Yeah, and then the lens flares is another one that's similar. Yeah. Let's see already. I haven't put lights in. There's no lights or even any setup with the sun, and already it looks okay.
Looks better on your screen than it does on it.
Yeah. Well, monitors have more colours. Yeah. So that's definitely as far as you'd need to go for your preliminary perspectives that you're hopefully going to prepare for next week. It's quite warm. So using that, so navigation, I'll just go back to the normal build mode. So WASD. So, to lift it up, you mean? You can't move objects. Yeah, using the camera. So it helps if you played a game, but if you haven't played those games, W, A, S and D are your navigation keys. So W forward, S back, A and D left and right. Q is up and E is down. That's it. And then just walk forward and go inside. That's it. And then you're in. Yeah.
We'll just go and shoot people in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, now the other problem is your building might not be high enough. So you generally want, this is probably something I didn't point out earlier. So you want to zoom, when you first bring your model in, make sure you zoom out enough, and you can even go and fix it if you've already brought it in. Zoom out enough so you can see the whole thing, and make sure that all of it is above the ground. You don't want it below that plane. You can lower the plane, but it's harder than just lifting the whole building up, or the whole model up. So to lift it up, with the imports option over here, not the green imports button, but the one next to it, you need to be in select mode, and then you've got the move up option, and you can select your model and literally lift it up or down away from the ground plane. WASD. You don't need to remember that, just look where they are on the keyboard. So letter W, yeah, all together. Yeah.
Presumably if you were building your own ground,
Yeah.
you have to position that where
Yeah, well you can excavate the ground, but normally you just lift up whatever you've made so that it's above the ground plane. That's easier. Lift the whole thing up. So that's why it's better to make the ground surface like I have here in Revit. So use a topo surface to make the ground, and then in Lumion you'll get that. So here for the roads and all that, the things surrounding the site, that's, yeah, much easier. You can't do that really in Lumion because you can't model things in Lumion. That's right, exactly, that's right. So it could be the bottom of your basement. And, yeah, that's fine. So that's it. You don't need to have, we're not going to say you need to have materials for next week, but if you've got them, I think you should show them. So what do you think? Because, you know, in the week 12 presentation, they've been asked to show, for the studio, to show black and white 3D views, black and white line drawings. So people were asking, should they show us materials and lights at this next week? But I think they should. If they've got them. Yeah, that's right. I thought we were preparing mostly for the final. I mean, we'll give you feedback for week 12 as well. It's a bit confusing. So, yeah. Yeah, but it also says lighting and materials in that part that is probably... Yeah. 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 Look, honestly, I think they're getting a bit confused about the digital process because design teachers don't tend to be that really knowledgeable about the software, and they don't realise that that's not a problem. The lighting and the materials is almost automatic nowadays. It's not an extra process. In the past it was. So it's not going to reduce your workload or... yeah, I'll mention that to them. Yeah, but I don't think that's... what they were worried about isn't so much that you were... yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're really just trying to help you do it for the studio, so
Yeah.
we can tweak it so that that happens. So if you're being asked to do what, black and white lines?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that
How do you delete something? Click on the delete, the trash can. And then what do you want to delete? Yeah, so then zoom out so you can find the node. So just zoom right out using the, just keep going back, and then eventually you'll see the node. So just keep going back,
You're getting over this well.
Yeah, and I heard them say, they said the same thing to me, that they thought there was too much Revit and just computer visualisation before the design concept was clear to you, to the people designing.
Should have done all that.
That's what I thought too.
You're going to run off.
Anyhow, I'll finish that video there because then we can just answer questions. So I'll finish it there. But hopefully that's given